everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of Taped Crusaders, the podcast that reviews every single superhero thing ever made. I'm your co-host, Michael, and as always, I'm joined by
Joshua Mervell, and today we're going to be taking a look at the 1994 film The Shadow.
And joining us is Shadow expert Champ Ian.
Yeah, thanks for having me along for this one, guys. I really appreciate it. This is
It's the only reason you're on this podcast.
it's so good. It's all been building up to this moment.
It's all,
Right.
yes, it has been. So here's the thing. I never,
Ian
ever
knows.
saw this in theaters in 1994. I never saw it until now. What is this, 30 years now? 30 years later? I can't do math.
Yeah,
30 years later. I don't know what to say about this movie. Ooh.
Thank you for watching Taped Crusaders.
This is going to be a short one, folks. But let me just say, before we even get to this movie, Champ Ian, why don't you tell us your experience with The Shadow?
I did have a little bit of experience with The Shadow coming up.
Really?
Yeah. Listen.
Nothing about Superman, no Batman. The Shadow,
The
though.
Shadow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Never saw a Spider-Man movie, but
Nope, but I have listened to my fair share of old radio serials.
interesting.
Oh, okay.
Shadow, X-1.
Whoa.
What other ones were there? I'm kind of drawing a blank right now. But the Shadow was the big one. And it was a vibe, to be honest.
Really?
I can see some of the elements that they plucked from it to put into this film. None of them worked, but in terms of the medium and the format, radio serials had to be very creative with their storytelling and with how they conveyed information to the listener, because it was a completely auditory medium.
Sure.
There was no
Yeah.
visual whatsoever. So everything had to be, you had to hear it,
Mm-hmm.
which made something like The Shadow a character that worked, because you didn't have to worry about, as someone making this show, how you hide them
Sure.
on screen, because you don't have to worry. It's just, you just have them laugh in the background and like, whoa, what was that? So it's all conveyed through the storytelling, and it just did not work for this.
Well, okay, first, we should say, before we get to this movie, let's just talk about the character of the Shadow. And Josh, do you have Wikipedia open over there?
Oh, yeah, sure.
So I read up on this today. He was introduced first as a narrator. I don't know if you knew this, Ian. There was a detective magazine that there was a radio version of.
Okay.
And then they decided, hey, let's have a narrator on this radio show introduce the stories. Then the narrator got so popular that kids would come to like the newsstands and say, hey, I want to read that Shadow magazine, a magazine that didn't exist. So they said, hey, well, if the narrator of the radio version of the magazine is so popular, why don't we start writing stories with him? And then they started writing stories with him, and then eventually, then they adapted those stories back to the radio. And then
Interesting.
eventually they did other media. But I don't know if you have the name of the magazine here in your Wikipedia here.
It's called Detective Comics.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know what? If you just go to the source of the character, it'll say it's a superhero film. Yeah, there we go. It doesn't matter because we don't do research on this podcast. So guess what? That's all you need to know. Precursor to Batman,
Street and Smith,
probably. That's probably the creator, right?
publisher.
That's the publisher. What's the name of the actual magazine? Precursor to the Batman. He had a secret identity. Two of them, actually, because if you read up on his history, he started with one and then it changed to the one you're familiar with, which is...
Lamont Cranston?
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
Detective Story magazine.
There you go. Detective Story magazine.
Yeah.
Okay. He
That's
was
close.
also his secret identity of...
Lamont Cranston.
Lamont Cranston. He was a debutante, right?
A man about town.
Yeah, exactly.
Millionaire playboy.
Exactly.
A Bruce Wayne sort of character.
Yes.
Right.
And he had almost like a shadow cave, like a bat cave, with his computers and his way to communicate with people. And obviously, it's not the exact same, but it's pretty interesting. I thought there's some parallels there, right? But okay. We're going out of order here. We're going crazy. I'm just going to give my first impression of this movie. I loved all of the elements, but I'm going to say my impression of this movie is that it felt like it was 5 hours long, and I think it's less than the sum of its parts. Josh, what do you think?
Yeah, it felt very long, but it also felt like they cut out every other scene in this movie because nothing leads in properly to the next scene. Like, it feels like a bunch of just weird moments that happen, and we're not really told why things are happening this way. They just happen. Even the way he gets his powers, it just happens. Like, he's this evil man who runs into this warlord who kind of confronts him, and then it cuts to a black screen, and they describe that he's a good guy now. He spent years training and using these powers and yada yada yada. Anyways, this is the Shadow.
They could have cut all that out, I think.
It's wild. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
But I mean, the most obvious comparison was Dick Tracy. I actually do think the story held together better than Dick Tracy, but that's not saying much.
No.
Because in this movie, I love obviously the cars, I love the buildings, the architecture, the cinematography was good, the characters were good, but I just felt like, again, like I said, halfway through the movie, I was like, okay, here we go. This is the final act. This is the final battle. But then it just kept going. And it was hard for me to identify what the problem was. But it's like you said, Josh, maybe it's just like there was so much story and they chopped it down. I don't know what.
It feels very chopped down. Like, there's so many moments where I'm like, wait, how did we get to this part? Like, Tim Curry traps him in this water globe that's sitting on the ground somewhere. Like, how did this happen? Why did he know to go there? How did he know that the Shadow was chasing him? Like, nothing makes sense. They cut to, there's another like huge moment where they just cut to something happening. But it felt like every scene was just like, they're not explaining to us how we're getting to this moment. We're just in this like set piece.
Ian, what did you think?
I was bored.
Yeah.
The entire time I was bored.
Yeah.
I didn't care about any of it. Josh, you're right about that. There was a whole lot of like, I guess now we're here doing this, and not really. It's hard to stay invested when you can't follow the thread of the story,
Right.
and you're just sort of sitting there guessing like, why are we in this sphere now that's being slowly filled up with water?
Yeah,
because they're looking for some sort of other sphere. They kept
yeah.
The beryllium sphere. They're going to make a bomb out of it, and oh my god, everything was so convoluted too. We have the last descendant of Genghis Khan, who smuggles himself into America in Genghis Khan's tomb for some reason.
Right.
He and all his henchmen are dressed in wildly stereotypical ancient Mongol outfits. Conspicuous, you think? If you're trying to
walking around New York.
Okay, here's the thing. I think what it comes down to for me, think about the number of famous actors in this movie. Like, just from watching the trailer, you see Arthur Curry, who we're all super excited to see.
Aquaman?
Wait, Arthur Curry?
Tim Curry.
Tim Curry. You see Tim Curry. You see Ian McKellen, Magneto. You see
Alec Baldwin,
Alec Baldwin, obviously. But I'm just saying.
You see the guy who played a Neelix on Star Trek
you see
Voyager?
Neelix. Okay, fine. At the time, he wasn't a huge actor. It's fine to have these bit parts. But you watch the movie and you're like, who's the main bad guy? Is it the Genghis Khan guy? Or is it Tim Curry? And then it's like the movie doesn't know either, right? And then
Tim Curry didn't know that he was in this movie for most of it.
Right. And that's what's weird too. By the way, who plays his buddy? Can you click your phone on?
Sure.
Who plays? He's a famous actor. I want to say it's Jackie Cooper, but no, it's not Jackie Cooper. His buddy. That's like the Commissioner Gordon, but it's not Commissioner Gordon.
Oh.
It's we should know this, but we don't do research. We refuse to.
Jonathan Winters.
Yes, Jonathan Winters. If you click on him, wasn't he in Gremlins? I think he was in Gremlins.
Oh.
He's in the movie, then he disappears, then he comes back, then he disappears. Penelope Ann Miller is supposed to be like the Lois Lane. She disappears. Even Alec Baldwin is the Shadow.
Oh, he's Papa Smurf.
Okay. Alec Baldwin is only the Shadow with like the Shadow face like 3 times. And there's like a giant.
But that's probably to the movie's benefit because he looked so.
Well, it's ridiculous.
Stupid
Also, why?
Why? Well, he doesn't need. You're right. He doesn't need to be that
Yeah, he can turn himself invisible.
He can turn himself. You're right, and he can put
it makes no sense.
The red cloak over his face or the red.
But only
scarf.
part of his face. It only goes up to here, so we can see his nose. All we can see is his goddamn nose,
like prosthetic
enormous.
nose.
It's just, what?
Also, they do not explain his powers at all in this movie. It changes so wildly. They talk about at the beginning something about how only his shadow will remain.
Yes.
So
he's invisible except for his shadow.
So does the shadow get damaged? That's what I took from it, because the guy shot him with the arrow when he was just the shadow, and it pinned him to the wall. He couldn't move, and he had to come back.
I think the idea
alive.
is that he is there, but you can't see him, but his shadow's there. So if you see his shadow, you can guess where he is, shoot him, and then the arrows actually go into his body, or the bullets. I think that's what the idea is.
That is the idea, and that's where this strayed big time from the radio show. In the radio show, it was just a mind thing. It was like you couldn't see him because he had this mental power, and he just sort of erased himself from your perception. He wasn't literally invisible.
Right.
He just...
So this is a problem with translating to a different medium.
Yeah.
Right.
Because Tim Curry also shoots him when he's the shadow form, and shoots the shadow and it does nothing.
Oh no,
that's another thing too.
You
know what I mean? Like
for a second.
Yeah, there was blood in the water.
No. In the hotel.
But shooting,
he's like shooting everywhere and shooting like the shadows and where he's showing up, and it doesn't seem to affect him at all.
Yeah, the movie doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Here's the thing: we should point out this film was written by, I don't know if you noticed this, David Koepp, who went on to write Spider-Man 1.
Oh, okay.
And Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Well, the best one.
Yeah. He's also written a ton of other Hollywood films, but he's one of those guys that has never written something that's a masterpiece. And I always wonder, how does this guy keep getting work? You know what his best film is?
Spider-Man, maybe?
Well, Spider-Man, but you know what his second best film is?
The Shadow?
No, it's not. No, no, it's the animated film where Johnny Depp is the voice of a lizard.
Rango?
Yes, he wrote that.
Oh, that's a really great movie,
That's a really good movie. That's his best movie right there. There you go. So anyway,
interesting.
Back to the shadow. I appreciate that this is like prototypical Paul Puro vigilante, along with other characters we reviewed like Doc Savage. What else have we talked about? Doc Savage.
I don't know. My brain's been wiped.
I don't know. But anyway,
Scarlet Pimpernel.
Yeah, Scarlet Pimpernel.
Everybody's favorite.
And like one of the stories from the Shadow, the case of the Chemical Syndicate, the first appearance of Batman was ripped off of the Shadow. And he's got a cool design, but I think there's something lost in translation where it didn't quite work. And I've never seen any other versions of the Shadow, so I can only comment on this movie, but something clearly doesn't work. Like, the movie looks okay.
Yeah. The movie looked great.
Yeah.
In parts. The cinematography was very competent.
Right.
Interesting use of particularly when they're doing a scene on the top of the building.
Yes.
Great angles, these sort of downward shots.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which were very compelling in terms of giving you a sense of the size of the city. Everything looked like a lived-in city. And it seemed very. I wasn't around personally in the 30s,
right?
But nothing really jumped out at me as like, well, that doesn't look right.
Yeah,
I agree.
Convincing.
They also like built the sets. It looks like the skyscrapers are like models that they're swooping around with the camera.
Yes,
like they're not like matte paintings, and
which worried me a little bit because the very very first scene when.
On
Alec
the bridge.
Baldwin when they show that temple.
Okay.
And it just looks like the jankiest little miniature. And I'm thinking this is going to be the worst. This is terrible.
I was worried about on the bridge because you could see the line from where the real bridge ended and the matte painting started. At the beginning,
like the special effects.
So I was like, and then I think everything else from there was good. Like I was gonna say, the models, I think do a really good job of matching the actual like real life sized sets that they built. Like the buildings and those like big top down views that you were talking about with like the balconies. I think it fleshed really well together. Like it
Well, there was also the CGI daggers with the faces on them.
That's stupid.
Oh, right.
Knife.
Yeah.
They could have just done, if they wanted to do that, they could have just done puppets or something.
Or they could have just not done that
or
at all.
just not done it. It was like primitive CGI, and it took me out of it. It wasn't horrible, but it took me out of it. You know.
It did take me out a little bit, only because not only was I thinking, oh, this is bad CGI, I was also thinking at the same time, oh, why is this happening?
Yeah,
like,
I know.
The concept is stupid.
It's for this movie, it's really dumb.
And it's not set, just if you haven't seen it, which I hope you haven't, because don't. There's this weird knife that it's a recurring thing, that this knife, it flies around on its own.
Yeah.
And whoever has the stronger mind, I guess, is able to control this knife and prevent you from being stabbed with it. The knife will also bite you if you hold it wrong.
No.
And it'll spin around in your hand to scare you. And then at the very end, I mean, this was not explained at all, but Alec Baldwin somehow, like, he stops trying and now he's controlling it, and he ends up.
This movie, I think doesn't know what it wants to do. It's got too many characters.
So many, yeah.
Way too many. Too many ideas. Like, to me, I don't know if this is in the radio show or whatever, the books or the... Cut out all that origin. Cut out all that crap. You know what I mean? I don't think any of it's necessary.
No.
Right?
It's a mystical power.
Right.
It doesn't matter how well you explain it.
Right.
It's a mystical power.
Right.
Or you make it more a part of the plot, considering the bad guy is also from the same place and has the same origin as our main character, right?
But we don't need to have them share that to explain how they have a similar power.
I agree.
That's something that, I mean, I don't know enough about the radio show to know if this is canon. I do know that a descendant of Genghis Khan was a regular on the radio show. I don't know if that is where Lamont Cranston got his power. I didn't listen to the episode where he spent some time in an opium den.
It's almost okay. Now, Ian, have you seen Batman Begins?
Yes.
Okay. So it's got a little bit of Batman Begins-esque, right? Like Bruce Wayne and Ra's al Ghul.
Like for the first 3 minutes of the movie?
No. He went to the mountains and trained with Ra's al Ghul.
No. I mean of this movie.
Oh, this movie.
Yeah.
Oh, I think you meant Batman Begins. Yeah. Like, and then the fact that later he comes back and they have his past together. Yeah. It's okay, but I just don't think it's necessary to this movie.
Yeah, I think that's maybe what I was thinking in my mind. Like, if you're going to have the characters intertwined and like connected, then you need to show why or how they're connected and not just tell us.
But
like, it doesn't.
The actor, I'm sorry. Okay, we should talk about the actors. Let's go through these actors. Alec Baldwin, when he's not busy murdering people on set, he was a really good actor at one point. He's still a good actor. What did you think of Alec Baldwin in this movie? Ian, what did you think?
This is me. I'm on the hook first. Yeah. He was.
He's a pretty nice guy, besides all the murdering, but
he didn't work for me at all remotely for this character. He was not an imposing presence as the Shadow. He was not convincing as a wealthy playboy. He just I don't know.
How do you like him as a Mongolian warlord, though? I mean, that worked, right?
That was weird.
Oh my god,
that was so weird. Yeah.
The first couple of scenes with him too were just he's got this terrible wig on,
right?
And he's shirtless in this opium den, but he's got these pants that come up to here,
and the longest claws.
Oh yes, he's got like
for some reason, yeah.
Yeah, he's always one of those guys that he was on the verge of being a leading man, but he never quite was. And
he doesn't have the.
Obviously, you've never seen Boss Baby.
Okay, but this is an example of why it just.
I don't think he's got the
quite.
charisma to get over that hump. Right, he can deliver his lines.
Yeah,
I like him in some things. I think when he's not the leading man, when he is able to kind of be the more character actor and these side characters, or like he plays a lot of like no nonsense head honchos and the CIA now.
Yeah.
Like
Hunt for Red October, I liked him in that, for example.
Right.
But
Like-
he works in like that sort of regimented.
Yeah.
Like you're in the military, you've got to.
Yeah,
follow
he
these
in Mission
rules.
Impossible. He's in a few of those too, as
Sure.
like the
Yep.
head of the.
And don't forget Glenn Ross. He was amazing in that.
Yeah, so I think that I do like him when he's playing roles that suit him. This just I don't think worked for him. But I also feel like too maybe at this time he was too young to play those types of characters. So I don't even know.
I don't know. I
what
think
he would.
I think he was the right age, but he just I think he can do like the Bruce Wayne-ish type thing, kind of, but not quite. There's something not working, and I can't pinpoint.
He's
it.
too much of a villain, I think.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like
it's like he's got a menace, like a malice behind his.
Every time he interacted with the woman, I was like, ugh.
Yeah,
like,
something's
it
not
just
quite
gave me the
right.
shivers. Like, this is not good.
Yeah, champion.
Their relationship was nonsense, and I don't know who is more to blame, because Penelope
Ann Miller.
couldn't act her way out of a wet paper bag in this film.
I can't criticize Penelope Ann Miller because I used to have a crush on her in 1994. She was only in a few movies. She was in Carlito's Way. She was in The Shadow. And then she starred in her own film called The Gun in Betty Lou's Handbag. Okay? Yes, I was obsessed. Not a great actress. Very nice person, I'm sure, from what I've seen. Not a great actress. But yeah, what a bizarre choice for this role, right?
And just the way that she was written as just being so, like, needy to the point of being, like, I'm uncomfortable watching this.
Yeah.
You've decided that you're going to follow Lamont Cranston around. You're not going to leave. You're going to basically just attach yourself against his wishes. And we're just, okay, fine. This is what we're doing. The whole thing made me a little uneasy.
Not great. What do you think, Josh?
And her connection to like the mystical, like psychic thing was played
pointless. Oh my
awfully.
God.
And it could have
Oh my
been
God, you're the
good,
first
like-
person whose mind I could read since I was 12 years old. Like, why even do it that way? It was just stupid.
It's strange to
Yeah.
do it that way. Like, why not have her like, or maybe she can read minds usually, and then she's like, "Wait, I can't read yours for some reason. Something's
yeah.
off," or like, you know what I mean? Like, because I like the idea of them working together. She's able to go and figure things out with her psychic abilities, figure out what's going on with like the building missing and where is this person, like that's a cool dynamic I think for these two characters, but I didn't see that in this movie. You know what I mean? Like it didn't work well here, but
she did save him in the giant water sphere.
that's true. But she did do things that technically helped and saved, but I didn't care because they didn't have like an actual connection on screen. Like there were no moments where they're like figuring out how to communicate with each other, or she's learning how. You know what I mean? Like there's no moments where it feels earned that they're just like connected and can do these things
right
now,
off the
right?
bat. Hey, I got you some wine.
Yeah.
How about getting some Peking duck, right? And
yeah. And it's the same with like the knife too, right? Where Alec Baldwin all of a sudden can use the knife at the end of the movie, but the whole movie he's struggling to like fight against it. And even the bad guy's like, "Oh, you have to channel your inner darkness," or whatever it is. But we don't see that like resolution where he like overcomes this obstacle of like his own mind to control this dagger.
No, you know what it feels like? It just feels like they had so many ideas, but they didn't focus in on any of them. It needed a rewrite. Yeah, it needed a rewrite. It needed like a rewrite to go, okay, cut out 2/3 of all this crap and just focus on this.
Yeah.
Because as we said, like sometimes I'd be watching the movie and I'd be like, "Oh, I forgot about that actor. I forgot about Tim Curry. I forgot about Ian McKellen. I forgot about this guy," because they'd be gone so long in the movie because they weren't focused.
Yeah.
Like even like we just watched Batman a few like months ago, And at least that movie knew what it wanted to do, right? This movie is all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I feel like.
I love Ian McKellen, but I feel like he had no place in the movie. Like, he had nothing to do.
Who was his character?
He was the father of Penelope Ann Miller, the scientist that was creating the atomic bomb.
Yeah. Like, why not make Tim Curry the dad
Or
and have him mind controlled or whatever?
Right.
That's why he's also fighting the shadow. Like, I don't know. It just feels like too much going on.
There's one other actor we could talk about, and that's the guy that played the Genghis Khan descendant.
Oh, I can
weak.
look that up.
I thought he was weak. Ian, what'd you think?
Yeah, no, just
nothing to him.
It's like they picked some guy off the street.
Right. I've never seen him in anything before or since.
John Lone.
Yeah, not a great actor. No offense, but not great. I don't know.
But he fit right in with all the other not great performances.
That's what I mean. Is like they had Tim Curry. Why not use him? I don't know.
He starred in The Last Emperor.
Oh, okay.
Academy Award-winning Last Emperor.
Yeah, okay. I've seen that. That's a good movie. So he was the
main character.
Emperor.
Yeah.
So he was much younger then. Okay. Oh, yeah, that's cool. So I guess he has done something. Okay, fine.
Rush Hour 2.
But I don't know. Yeah, this movie. Okay, I guess when I see this movie, my biggest comparison, like I said earlier, is Dick Tracy. Ian, how do you compare it to Dick Tracy?
Dick Tracy was far more entertaining than this.
Interesting.
I can't put my finger on why necessarily.
Right.
Neither did anything very well aside from the visuals and the sets. I don't know. They're just...
I think they're equally as bad, but Dick Tracy at least had like some cartoonish Al Pacino nonsense going on, where you're entertained at parts. Where I feel like even like the fun set pieces of this movie weren't like, whoa, this scene is fun, or like this thing is exciting. When he's stuck in the ball and the water's coming, I'm like, who gives a shit? Like nothing is happening. There's a scene where there is an atomic bomb hanging from the inside of a hotel room, and the floor is like rotating around, and Alec Baldwin is fighting a psychic knife, and it's still boring.
That's a great.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I'm still the whole time like,
well,
it's because nothing has any reason for happening. Nothing is set up at all.
Yeah,
and these ridiculous things happen, like this bomb later falls on the ground, and it's rolling down the hallways, and they're chasing it like it's a friggin' cat toy.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, what is happening
it
here?
felt like a
and
different
why?
movie at that point too.
Yeah.
Like,
and they go this way. Oh no, it's upstairs.
It's heading for the elevator.
Yeah.
I was like, you
even like okay.
have gotta be kidding
remember
me.
the scene where they drop the letter into that chute, and it goes through
and
the
it's
tube.
following the
Oh,
tubes
and it's
forever.
so crazy. And it's like, okay, I get what you're trying to do, but it makes no sense because if you're going to try and hide that tube, why not put it in the building under the ground instead of in a place that anyone could just follow?
Yeah.
So that's an example of showing
and
off.
exposed completely.
Right, that's what I
so
mean.
it's a bird's gonna land on it, and it's gonna bend it slightly, and you're gonna get all your messages stuck.
Right,
you're not gonna get them.
So
and people
like
are gonna die.
Yeah, it was like a cool idea, but they did it so wrong.
Yeah, there's so many like things like that don't make sense. The rings, how do the rings work? How do they communicate with each other?
Yeah.
Why does he have to leave his gigantic mansion to go to a secret base that is in the middle of the fucking city that anybody could access, anybody could just stumble upon? Like everything feels so backwards in this movie.
Here's the thing, okay, I don't know who this director is, but I've never heard of him, and I never...
Let's see what else.
Yeah, I don't know what else he did. We talked about the writer, but I think the main problem with this movie is it has no voice, it has no identity. And so at least when we watch Darkman by Sam Raimi, you get the idea that, oh, this is a Sam Raimi joke. This is a Sam Raimi action scene.
Highlander.
He did Highlander?
Yeah.
Okay, Highlander, I'm sorry, it's a mess. Have you ever seen Highlander?
No.
It is a fucking mess. A huge fan base, but it's a disaster. And that actually makes a lot of sense. I'll just leave it at that. So here's the thing. This movie, I have to admit, it's 5% better than I thought it would be. But not as good as Dick Tracy. Definitely not as good as The Rocketeer.
No.
Is it better than Doc Savage?
I'm gonna say no.
Oh my God.
I'm gonna say no. Like there was nothing fun about this movie. I'm gonna go back to Dick Tracy again. There's not an awful lot that I remember about Dick Tracy, except they did such a good job on the character makeup.
Sure.
That sticks in my brain. Is like, wow, that is a fun thing that they did, and I was entertained by just watching these people, and little bits like stylistic elements.
Sure.
Like when Dick Tracy is driving around in his car, and that little kid would just pop his head up in the rearview window. Does have nothing to do with anything that's happening in the movie, but it's a stylistic choice that it was clever and it made me chuckle. And here I am talking about it months later, right? Because I remember it. I'm not going to remember a goddamn thing about this movie. This is going to be gone from my mind. This is the power pack of feature length.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the thing, Dick Tracy didn't have a great story, but at least they kind of knew what the characters were, right? They knew who they were to some extent. What do you think, Josh?
I don't know if they knew the characters. I think that they knew. I think that they had a description of the characters when they were writing the script, but like the Shadow doesn't do anything in the movie.
No, I meant Dick Tracy.
Oh, sorry.
Not
Okay, I was gonna say
the Shadow is so bad
feel like
that it's ruining Dick Tracy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. No, you're right. They had characters. There were things happening for no reason in Dick Tracy, but at least the characters felt like they had motivation.
A little bit grounded.
In this, I was like, why is any of this happening?
That's the thing. When you at least when you get to the end of the movie, you go, okay, I know that there's a love story between Dick Tracy and Tess. I know that they want to kind of adopt the kid and save him, and at least there's something to
there's conflict with Madonna coming in.
Right.
Like, there's all of these different parts that feel like they have a purpose.
Right, exactly.
That's not the case in this movie.
No.
I don't think at all.
So, knowing that, I can see why it failed, why there's no sequel, and why we haven't seen any Shadow properties in 30 years other than some comic books. Whew.
What do you think about the catchphrase?
What is it?
The Shadow knows.
No, who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? The Shadow knows. It's okay. I mean, it's from the 30s. But what I didn't like about this movie, I hated, is when the bad guys are about to kill somebody and then it's not scary. It's not cool.
No. You know what it is? They listened to one or two episodes of the radio show, and that's what they picked up. Because, again, a purely audio medium, you can't show somebody sneaking up.
Sure.
How do you convey that this invisible person is there with these criminals? You have them laughing in the corner, and that's what they did. It was never this over the top, like
right.
It was just this sinister little
which is kind of scary.
It was kind of creepy. Like it wasn't meant to do anything other than to creep the villains out and to let them know, like, hey, you're being watched. I'm right here.
But they went over the top in this movie. Yeah. Really over the top. It was annoying.
But it's the thing that they remembered.
Yeah.
As well as the catchphrases, right? They made sure to put them all in. One of the first things we heard was the weed of crime bears bitter fruit.
Yeah.
Which is how every episode of the radio show, that was the closing line. Right before the credits. Hey kids, don't be criminals.
It's almost like the corporate cookie cutter version of The Shadow. What can you do? Okay, so I guess we're going to say do not watch this movie. Don't waste your time. Just watch our review, right?
Yes.
Watch our review instead of it. And then watch every episode of Tape Crusaders. Pretty soon, and then coming up, should we spoil what we're going to review or just leave it?
Let's spoil it.
Spoil it? Okay, coming up soon, we're going to be reviewing The Human Target. I know you've been waiting for that one, so check it out very soon.
I can hear the applause.
Yes, the applause, yes. Josh, can you tell us where you can find our episodes?
Nobody's going to be watching this, Mike. He's going to watch The Human Target.
Come on. Woo!
All right, you can find all of our stuff over on our website at thecomicbooksyndicate.com. All of our podcasts are video formats. You can also check them out on YouTube. Leave us a like, leave us a comment. Let us know what you guys think about the stuff we're watching. What do you think about The Shadow? Let us know.
Don't forget, every week at Meteor Movie Night, Uniplex, with Champion as our host.
That's right. We watch these movies so you don't have to.
Woo! All right. Be sure to join us next time. Okay, see you later.
Bye.